Another show about knights? Lance and Masks was not enough for one season. Oh well, maybe this is the only similarity it has to the shows of autumn, and everything else is original. Yeah, won't happen. Info dumping through television. Still lazy, but definitely better to simply monologuing crap out of nowhere. An internal monologue that gives us insight to the protagonist's mentality. It is not info dumping the state of the world with words. This is good. Unlike the part which is doing exactly that by explaining the superpowers with narration. This is bad. You showed his mentor a few seconds earlier. He could have done that, as he explains it to the protagonist as a child, when he had no idea of such things yet. 2 minutes into the episode and we are back to the usual shit. He enters his room and there we have a half-naked girl. It was funny the first billion times, but then it got boring. How about if he takes his clothes off too? I love this guy, totally not better. So, the bitch wants him to commit suicide in order to regain her honor, and he, like a man, states the obvious. Kill myself because I saw you in your underwear? Are you fucking crazy? I love this guy! And when this excuse is not enough, he plainly excuses the whole incident as her beauty was too much to take his eyes off her. What a ladies man! Woo! And then she gets totally wet. Woo! Metaphorically and literally, as the fire extinguisher gets activated by her tsundere aura. That's a great joke, why can't we have more like this? By the way, why was he even blamed in the first place? This whole situation happened just because the bitch was undressing in his room. Why does he need to accept responsibility for what is essentially her fault? What the hell, the president of the school refused to reveal they are roommates? So it's her fault for not informing them about it all this time. Look at this shit, she even leaves the room a minute earlier instead of telling them the truth and sparing all the drama. What a troll this president is. And even so, the tsundere is still more responsible for this mess than the protagonist, since she didn't lock the door while she was changing. But somehow they don't realize such obvious problems and go along with it. They even want to settle the score with a duel where the loser will be a slave to the winner for all his life. And what a fair duel this will be. She is rank A, he is rank F, and he still agrees to this bullshit despite everything being a mistake cast by the tsundere and the troll president. And then we have the obligatory duel between the two, which always happens in such types of stories. At least they do it in a controlled environment, not in the middle of a public area where they destroy public property and hurt innocent civilians. A small flashback that reveals the motivation of the tsundere. Nice touch, now I have a little more respect for her. Something which I do not have for her counterpart in the other show, since the animators only cared to show us her butt. Another video game battle where they are not physically hurting each other, as tensionless as it was in that other show. Jeez, who would have guessed? The completely worthless protagonist turns out to be amazing in ways that are not measured by school tests. What does that remind me of? And thus he wins with the power of will, I guess. Because fuck strategy. Boo! Hey, look at that, she wears the ribbons even while on a hospital bed.
Take all my clothes off, but not my ribbons. Those are the only things that define my generic character design.
Isn't that right, asterisk? So then she spends a few moments reflecting on what happened and what she learned from all that, which is cool and all, but then we just need to go back to soft porn bullshit and ruin everything because this is a light novel.
I like you, but I am too much of a bitch to admit it. Soon.
Oh, and there is also a tournament where schools competed with superpowers and the one the protagonist is in has done poorly the past years. What does that remind me of from something I saw recently, as well as any past season that has a similar getup? Why are you sabotaging yourself like that? Anyways, that was the episode. Surprisingly very entertaining, but still trash because it's a light novel adaptation. It was a decade ago when Shakugan no Shana popularized battle harems by making them seem like an awesome new way of merging fighting shonen with harems. Everybody went to copy its formula with slight variations, and the result was a saturation of the whole thing. Now nothing can make a battle harem seem like it stands out from the rest, no matter what it does. There was a time when calling something a deconstruction or a subversion was enough to elevate a show at the top of its respective genre, but those times are now gone, since as it turns out anything can be a deconstruction if you overthink it enough, and anything can be labeled subversion just by being a satire of stereotypes. Everybody uses them as buzzwords nowadays to excuse why they like a show, so everything is a deconstruction and thus nothing is special, even when it is doing more than the average specimen of a genre. A proof of which is Chivalry of a Failed Knight. It makes fun of the formula by messing with people's expectations when it comes to stereotypes. There is a scene where the protagonist walks inside a room while a girl is undressing. Instead of yelling and apologizing like a beta male, he takes off his
his own clothes so the feeling can be mutual. There is another scene where upon hearing the protagonist's sister is coming to see him, he is questioned if they are not blood related and thus there is incest involved. He replies they are blood related, which does not negate the fact that there is incest after all. Is any of that enough to make the show actually good? Of course it's not, since it's still a battle harem about an OP protagonist being surrounded by several bimbos hitting on him and constantly undress on every occasion. Many are praising it for the MC going for a steady relationship instead of never choosing a girl, but this is only making the harem to be of the supporter type instead of the balanced one. I don't see how that is a plus. Sword Art Online is also a support harem. Does that make it any less terrible? I sort of liked the emotional baggage everyone in the cast was carrying, since subverting expectations is messing with their head even in a story. Their internal conflicts felt a lot more significant than the average bimbo, who only cares about becoming the number one bitch of the MC. That is as far as it goes though, since it's still about an OP protagonist everybody constantly victimizes, although he is constantly steamrolling one-dimensional rapist bad guys, who constantly gloat and underestimate him during battle. I liked the psychological warfare they were using in every battle, making them be more about a proper mental state than brute force. They were still coming down to the OP protagonist being the only one who can steal techniques and use them against his opponents, thus having a secure counterattack no matter what power they're using or how strong they are. The show deviates from the path only superficially, and thus doesn't make an actual difference in the long run. It's not something like Neon Genesis, which becomes a completely different show by the end of it. Is it a bit better than your typical battle harem? Yes, especially Mahuka, which is everything wrong with the genre, but not by much, and since all these types of shows are trash, it is still about a show based on a bad light novel. Why don't you read my book instead? It's better than this garbage.